All right, everyone. Hello. I am Ajs Zero, and welcome to the first attempt at an episode of what I'm calling Baddy Reflections, which is going to be an intermittent podcast series I'm doing where I just ramble about whatever I feel like talking about. So we'll see where this is going to go. This is not going to have any kind of set release schedule. I'm going to just kind of tackle some topics I think are interesting as they come to me. And so this first episode, this is something I've been talking about for a while, but I wanted to talk about what the SBL was, which was the very first league we ran, and kind of how we got from there to where we are now with Baddy Smash. This is going to be really bare bones production, like this overlay that you see right now is about the limit of how much effort I was able to put into this. So we'll see. If I do this more than a few times, I may try to level up the production a little bit. So, well, here we go. So what was the SBL? So the SBL was the Swain Baddy League, and that was a League of Legends league where you played the team game League of Legends against each other. And literally where the name twitch.tv/SwainBL comes from, because Swain Baddy League, Swain BL, that's where we got the current Twitch URL from. And when we ran the SBL, we never really imagined it was going to turn into what we've been doing now. But the SBL first season was in the winter to spring of 2013, and we've generally had 2 seasons of fairly serious league play since then, nonstop. With some of the years when the SBL and the Baddy Overwatch League were overlapping, we'd even have 4 in a year, or as you've seen now, 4 in a year between the Baddy Overwatch League and Baddy Smash, as well as a couple of much less serious events we've run in the middle of that. So the SBL, there was a total of 11 seasons of the SBL over 5.5 years, and it was just 4 teams for the first 4 seasons before we expanded to 6 teams from seasons 5 to 11. And it's really similar to what you see now with Baddy Smash. It was every Tuesday night from 7 to 10 p.m.-ish. There would be multiple matches. We streamed everything with commentary from day one, and generally there was always some kind of regular season that led into some sort of playoffs, and there was always a long regular season followed by a playoffs with an eventual champion. So what was it like before the SBL, and how did we get to the idea of running this league? So the pre-SBL era, honestly, it was just all of my friends played League of Legends. Like, literally almost every single friend I knew from high school, from college, in addition to a bunch of people I met online, we just were playing League of Legends all the time. And so me and some of my friends, we had a team that we'd go to our local PC gaming club. We'd go to the LAN tournaments, and we'd enter the tournaments, and we'd have a ton of fun. And that was Team Swain, which is where the Team Swain Present stuff comes from, and why we have the Swain and everything we do. That's kind of was the root. That was our team. We'd compete in tournaments with Team Swain, and that was guys like me and Zed and Mai Wang, as well as some other people who are still around. And the thing with League was, despite having all these friends who played League of Legends, none of them had ever had the chance to play on a serious team before. And not only do we go to these LAN tournaments, but we queue together online, we do ranked as a team, and League of Legends especially was this game that was just so dramatically different in what I'm going to call the competitive landscape, which just means playing with consistent teammates and trying to be good as a team, in addition to trying to improve as an individual. I mean, everyone had played pre-made games with their friends before, but it's really different when you're committed to playing with a team over a long period of time. The core of Team Swain had been together for probably multiple years by the end of our run. And we had so much fun going to these LAN tournaments where we'd play in these super highly competitive matches. And I was always really sad because I felt like this was pure League of Legends, the way it was meant to be played. And despite the fact that all my friends played League of Legends, almost none of them had ever had the opportunity to play League of Legends the way it was intended to be played. And I wanted my friends to experience that, but everyone always knew, like, the idea was if you got good, you'd eventually join Team Swain, because we would rotate through people as they stopped playing League as much, and the team generally improved with time. But no one really wanted to put a team together that was just going to be dramatically second fiddle to Team Swain. Like, we'd occasionally get a second group of our friends to enter the LAN tournaments, and that was always really fun, but that'd kind of be a spur of the moment at the LAN. We'd put 5 people together kind of thing. And so I wanted to come up with a way, how do I get my friends to play competitive, high-stakes League of Legends that they don't have to worry about getting just trumped on by Team Swain at the end of the day. And after some heavy brainstorming, I came up with this concept for the SBL. I worked out a bunch of kinks, and I pitched it to a couple of friends one night. There was Zed and a good friend of mine, Kenny. We literally just sat there drinking beers for like 4 hours as I worked. I just kind of explained every detail. And at the time, I was like, this is a crazy idea. Like, there's no way anyone's going to think this is feasible. And they were like, holy shit, this is brilliant. This all works together. You put a ton of thought into this. Let's do it. So what exactly was the SBL? It was a League of Legends league, like Baddy Smash is a league, not just a tournament. And the idea was that you didn't enter as a team, you entered as a player. So the first season our goal was 4 teams, and so we had a player pool of 24 players, and we would have an auction draft to make these teams. And the thing that was really necessary to all this is we called them team owners, which was just copying the idea from a traditional sports league, essentially. And there'd be these team owners or the team drafters who they would draft these teams in the auction draft, and then they did not play. That was a really important part of the competitive balance because obviously you could never find 4 people that are completely evenly skilled. So if a team would have a team owner playing that was better than the other team owners, massive competitive advantage, and we didn't want to do that. And so not only did having these team owners that didn't play help the competitiveness that way, but it also gave us an opportunity for people that were friends of ours that maybe didn't play a league much anymore or didn't want to commit to a league that was going to take multiple months to play. They could still find a way to be a part of the league. And so this team owners idea, this continued into the Baddy Overwatch League, if you've been around that at all, and was generally a success. You'd have this auction draft, you'd put the team together, and then you were, some team owners would try to coach, but generally the team owners were players not as good as the players on their team, so there was usually really mixed but not much success from that. Generally, they were just your biggest fan, and they'd be spamming for you in Twitch chat, rooting for you every week, because if you drafted a shitty team, you'd get roasted for it. And this was really exciting in League of Legends because would be so many different ways to build the team. You could go for don't get any of the top players, but try to have no weak links on your team and put together a really high average skill level. Or you could have a team. It's just hitting me. I wanted to put a graphic up here, and I totally forgot to set this up to do that. If I think too when I post this, I'm going to post actually like a screenshot of what a completed draft looked like. But you could have teams where it's like you had a $20 of a salary cap, we'd call it, and you'd have a team where like every starter was like a $4 player, and you have this really balanced team where everyone was one of the better but not the outright best player at their roles. Or you'd have a team where maybe you get one of the absolute superstars that would be like a $8, $9, $10 player, and then you'd kind of fill up a team and you'd maybe have one weak link that your team is trying to play around. Or sometimes you'd even see a team put 2 of the best players in the whole league together, and they're like, hey, it's we've got LeBron and Anthony Davis. Who cares who else is starting on this team? They're going to work it out. And League of Legends was always such an interesting game to play because there was so many strategic decisions you could make based on the types of players you had on your team. And so this would always be really exciting, and then you'd have a full regular season. So in the SBL, there were a few exceptions, but generally the SBL regular season was a double round robin. So you'd play one league. So when there was 4 teams, like in the first season, it was a 6-week regular season. So you'd play one match, a best of 1, each week, and then after the 6 weeks, we'd have a seeded playoffs. And then when we expanded to 6 teams, that was an even longer season. You had 10 weeks to double round robin before going into usually the top 4 teams made it into the playoffs. And there were slight tweaks from season to season. We experimented with a few shorter seasons, especially towards the end, as those of us running it were a little less interested in League of Legends. But other than expanding, the format was pretty much from the first season. It was what it stayed, other than those shorter seasons. So it ended up being really exciting, and especially because we ran 11 seasons of this by the end, you have these players where they'd have pedigree by the end. Like, we've seen this guy, he clutches it out in SBL matches all the time. Like, who cares? Maybe his rank has fallen a little bit this season, but we're really not that concerned about that because we know that this player always shows up at the end. And it was really interesting, and we built a lot of really long-lasting friendships out of this. There were some really exciting teams that were legitimately much better than the sum of their parts. And it was just generally a lot of fun. It's one of my time playing in the SBL. I played in the first 7 seasons, so I started the SBL and I ran it through the first 7 or 8. I think I ran it through one more season after I stopped playing, before we eventually handed it off to our friend 30, who, you know, if you follow the Baddy Overwatch League, he's the one that took the Baddy Overwatch League when Zed stopped running it. And so I was always I started the SBL and I ran it for a while. I've ran Baddy Smash since day one. And with all of the Baddy Leagues, I've either run them or I've been like a direct assistant to whoever's running them. So I've always been really involved with all of these. I'm very passionate about it. It's turned into such a fun way to build friendships and to compete with our friends, because competing in tournaments online is just never quite the same as these experiences we would get playing on LAN tournaments, where you win a match and you have to go over and shake people's hands, and like you get to know the people that you played, and that's an experience you don't get in online tournaments. And that's another really key thing we wanted to replicate with the Baddy Leagues, is by having a community we were creating, you would have good reason to, be a good sport, and you can make friends even with the people you were competing against. And being able to build friendships with people you've competed against, I think, is a really valuable thing, and it's led to really good friendships for me. There's a lot of people that I met through the Baddy Leagues that are some of my best friends in the whole world. So how did all of that become Baddy Smash? Baddy Smash was the first. We experimented this. We ran Baddy Ball Z for 2 seasons, which was when Dragon Ball FighterZ came out. We did a DBFZ. We did 2 seasons, and that was a fairly small event. I think we had 16 players both times. And that was where we kind of started laying out the groundwork for how would we do a 1 versus 1 Baddy League. And I was really concerned about this initially, because this couldn't be anything like how we ran the team games, where in the team games you could be the worst player in the league, but it balanced out because the best players had to have worse players on their teams. And so generally, because of how we did the auction draft, the teams would generally be competitively balanced. Some team owners would just bomb the draft occasionally and you'd be kind of screwed from day one, but generally everyone was competitive, at least within a reason. So with a 1v1 game like Baddy Smash, the question was, what do we do different here? And so I knew from day one we had to have some kind of multi-stage event. So in Baddy Smash 1, we did smaller groups. We had 32 players. It was 4 groups of 8. And my thinking was, well, if you're one of the weaker players, at least in this group of 8, you're only going to have to play a few top players, theoretically. And you'll at least have maybe half your games will be kind of close with the other people at the bottom of your group. And so you're hopefully going to get more good games than you would if you went to a local and just got like trounced 0-2 in a double elim bracket. But it still wasn't great. The bad players generally didn't have enough games against people in their skill bracket. So the Season 2 iteration, Baddy Smash got even bigger. We're up to 42 players. And what we ended up doing was splitting the whole league into 2 groups. So you were in a group of about 20, and we did round-robin groups again. And my thought at the time was, well, this will make it so that if you're one of the worst players in the league, you're still going to have a handful of games against bad players. But this still didn't quite hit the mark, because if you're one of the worst players in the league, you still had to play like 15 games against people that were going to just dump on you. And because these groups were so big and so like hotly competitive, the top players had to be going all out all the time, because the top of these groups would be so closely competitive and everyone was playing for seeding, and it was kind of a mess. The group stage was way too long. So after Baddy Smash Season 2, the big question I had was, what can we do to have more meaningful matches? And I guess meaningful matches, that's a concept I should have been talking about more before. The whole idea with the SBL was that every game should be meaningful no matter what your skill level was. If you were a bad player, you still had incentive to be the best you could be. If you were a 25 or a 50-cent player out of the $20 salary, just by not being a flaming dumpster pile, you were a net positive to your team. And it really kind of mirrored the way a traditional sports team would be built, like a professional sports team would be built. And so everyone in the SBL had incentive, but also if you were a really good player, you had a lot of incentive to be the outright best player in the league. Because if you were Master Splinter being drafted for $10 out of a $20 salary cap, and you were just like the 3rd best jungler in the league, like your team was fucked. You were 100% fucked. And so it made it so that everyone had to try to pull their weight and then some. And everyone had the same incentive to improve, and it worked really well. So I asked myself, what can we do with Baddy Smash to make it so that your matches are meaningful? And we're never going to be able to have meaningful matches in the same way that you would in a team game. But that's where I first came up with the idea of the now current format to separate between Division 1 and Division 2. Generally, we can do a pretty good job of guessing who the top seeds are going to be and who the bottom seeds are going to be just by looking at the previous season. And so that's what we ended up doing. We seeded people based on their playoff position from the previous season, and we just tried to make estimated guesses with new players. We'd kind of err on the side of assuming they'll be a little weaker than they might be if they were a new player. So if you were new, you kind of have to earn your way up to Division 1 by playing for a season. But there's been exceptions. Like we knew players like KK and Candy were going to immediately be among the best players in the league, so there was no reason for them not to be in Division 1. And so I was thinking, well, we can separate them from Division 1 and Division 2, but one of the things that matters in Baddy Smash is that every player has a chance to win the league. And so I thought, what can we do to make it so that these players all have that opportunity? And I thought, what if instead of being a 2-stage league, we did a 3-stage league? What if we put, I literally stole this idea from the CSGO majors, but I knew you could do, with 16 players in a Swiss format, you could make it so that 8 would advance and 8 would be eliminated. And as I started looking at the numbers, we had 32 players for Season 3. I was like, well, we could do 8 players from Division 1, go straight to the playoff bracket, they'll skip this Swiss stage, and then we could have the bottom of Division 1 and the top of Division 2 all into the Swiss. Well, let's go. Let's let them all play it out. And so this ended up really hitting the mark on everything we wanted to do, where if you were one of the worst players in the league, you didn't have to spend any matches wasting your time essentially against the top players from Division 1, and vice versa. The Division 1 players didn't have to play through all these games where they're going to be back-to-back 3-stocking or at least 2-stocking a lot of these players, which is just mentally boring and kind of draining and a waste of time for the top players, and really just a feels-bad moment for the bottom players. You get to play against other Division 2 players only, and if you're not able to make it to Swiss, you at least can see a really clear path to improvement. It's not you got your head beaten by the Harris brothers and KK and Duds and me and whatnot. You know, one of those things is not like the others. But you can see your path to improvement, and you're not going to be just demoralized from all these really huge losses you took. And that was the big format or feedback I got after Season 3 was a lot of players, their matches mattered more. We just cut out all those waste your time matches. And so that's the format we've had for Season 3 and Season 4. And really, it feels like we've kind of hit the mark with being a true Baddy League, where all of your matches are meaningful and you could see the path to improvement. And so we'll see where that takes us going forward. I would really like to keep generally this format or close to it in place. Unfortunately, with it being a 1v1 game, it's a little more finicky in terms of the number of players playing. You kind of have to have certain numbers of players to make the individual stages work the way they do. But it's also a lot easier than a team game where it's if you don't get enough players, you know, you have to outright cut a team. And so we were always really, honestly, pretty desperate some seasons to make sure we could get enough players to still have 6 teams. We don't have to worry about that with Baddy Smash. If we did a smaller season, it wouldn't be a big deal, which let us not have to compromise our community, where some of the worst apples we've had in the team games have been players that we probably wouldn't have let in, but we were really like, hey, we need 2 more players still, or we do not have enough teams. And so one of the things we wanted to do with Baddy Smash, we wanted this to be different than your local, where if you're one of the weaker players there, you're going to just go 0-2 and go home. It's going to give you multiple chances to compete. You know, even if you're one of the weaker players, you still, this season, would have had 7 shots to play games. And you just get to see so much more about how you play when it's a competitive match that has stakes and ultimately is more engaging for everyone. So, I don't know, I'm actually really proud. We're at about 20 minutes here, and I didn't get too rambly or off topic, I don't think. I didn't, probably could have planned out a little more of this, I guess. I hit a point where I felt like I had to just go with it, so we'll see. I'll probably get better at this as I do it a few more times. I still have a few more topics I think I'd like to address during this current season of Baddy Smash, but my goal with this video was something that would kind of stand the test of time. This is something I could link to people next season of Baddy Smash or any time in the future to be like, hey, how did you come up with this weird idea? Because this league is just it's so different than anything I've done. And hopefully tracing back the roots explains how we got to where we are now. Because, like I said, the first season of the SBL was early 2013, and I don't know, it's hard to imagine Baddy League's going anywhere anytime soon. We feel really good about where we're at with Baddy Smash, so I hope this video will stand the test of time. I hope the people that were around for those early SBLs maybe found something interesting here, and I hope people that are maybe newer members of the community that just started recently in Baddy Smash that keep hearing us talking about the SBL, kind of this explains a bit more of how we got to the point we're at. So if you watched this, thank you. Once again, I'm really happy I did this in under 30 minutes. We're looking at like 21 minutes clocked right now, so that's good. You all know I like the sound of my voice a lot. So I'm Ajs Zero. If you check this out, thank you. If you're a random person on YouTube and you watch this, that's weird. Peace.